Hey folks, week 9 here, and today this video is going to be about visual styles and your scale and level of detail. And some of this it's repetitive from what we've covered in the past, but as we're moving into creating drawing sheets, it's important that we look at it again. So I'm working with the file from last week, and you're not doing anything with this. I'm going to demonstrate, and you can open it and follow along if you want to. That's fine. So let's start with visual styles, and these are controlled down here, okay? And so let's look at our options. We've got right here, we've got 5 options here. We've got wireframe, hidden line, shaded, consistent, and realistic. Sometimes you will see the ray trace option listed there. It just depends on the view and what's going on. So if we look at wireframe, and that's just exactly what it sounds like. It's like every edge is now a single wire line, and it looks confusing because there's nothing filling the voids. There's no surfaces, there's no materials or anything like that. But this is the fastest view that Revit has. When you think in terms of your video graphics of your computer, the wireframe is the fastest because it's the least amount of information that has to be computed. Okay, but it can be it can be confusing to look at, but we will use it occasionally when we need to see something beyond a surface that's hidden. Okay, so we do use it. Sometimes it helps you to find things when might otherwise be hidden. Most of the time, you will find yourself working in what's known as hidden line, in which now things are surfaces are surfaces. I find this the easiest way to work with in Revit. I know a lot of people like the color, but color slows you down. So it kind of depends on your computer and what you're trying to do. Most of the time I end up working in hidden line. If we look at shaded, shaded applies the colors that are set up in the materials, excuse me, in the materials library. And the normal shaded mode has shadows. So if you were to look at it, you don't see a shadow on the ground unless you turn on shadows. Okay, so now you can see shadows. But this part of the building is shaded, so it's darker than this side of the building over here. And so consistent colors, if you want to work in color, consistent color is easier to work with, okay? Because there's no shading. Everything it's a consistent light source. And then of course realistic is the slowest mode, in that it is applying the material graphics, the appearance graphics, and of course this is just gray still, but it slows down your video processing, because now what was a color, a lot of the materials have a JPEG or a bitmap surface texture that gets applied to it, based on your material type, and so it really slows down your computing process. All right. Now, and I'm guessing, I'm not sure where the ray trace comes up in which views. Maybe it's only in camera views. But it's like rendering, and we're going to cover rendering later in the class. But when it does appear here, you go to it, it adds a different menu option bar up here on dealing with things. Now, that's our visual style. And like I said, most of the time we're going to end up working in hidden line or consistent color, one of the two. Okay, so scale and level of detail. Let me let's see. Let's go to level 1. Oh. Okay. So when we're creating views, or we have views, they have a scale and a detail level. All right. The view scale is over here. You got detail level here. You can also change them down here in the view controls here. There's all your scales you can choose from. And of course, level of detail that we just talked about. Oh, excuse me, right here. Level of detail, coarse, medium, and fine. When I am building a model, most of the time I work in fine detail. Okay, because it shows you the most detail. It gives you our layers for our walls, doors and windows. It gives you more information on doors and windows. So most of the time I work in fine detail. And of course, if you have hidden lines, or thin lines turned on, it makes it easier to select things, because here you can see now we have this huge thick line going around the wall. It just makes it easier to select things. So I work in thin line, and most of the time I work in fine level of detail, because it just makes it easier to see things in what you're picking. Now, let me open up the drawing sheet here. Okay, so now we had set this view is at 1/8 inch scale. Okay, so if I change it, and I double clicked inside the viewport to activate it. So if I were to change that to 1/4 inch, you can see it changed the whole size of the view, but all of the text changed so that the text itself remains the same height on the drawing, because all of our text has a height, already set to it in the text style. And so when you change a scale, it automatically changes all your text and all of your annotations and dimensions and things. Now the problem is, now my view is too big for my sheet, okay? And so if I change it back, and I'm just going to roll back, you can see the text and everything changed, automatically with that. Now, I kind of demonstrated the level of detail with the wall thing there when I showed you that. One thing we didn't talk about is the families. Okay, and we'll get into this when we dealt with family creations, when we made the tables. We kind of talked about it a little bit, in that when you edit a family, you can, let's go to a plan view. Okay, and so here's our door family, and if I click on the trim and go to visibility graphics, this tells me where it's visible at which detail levels, because sometimes we would want that trim showing up on our floor plans. Maybe we only want it in fine detail or something. So okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it on for plan and then when cut, but I'm going to turn it off for coarse. So I'm going to say okay. Let me do the other side also. And I'm going to load that one into my project. And now I'm like, where did it go? Oh. I lost the door. Or maybe I was just in the wrong place, huh? Okay. Now there we go. Okay, I was looking in the wrong place. Okay, so now we're at fine detail, and you can see the casing, the trim shows up. If I change to coarse detail, it does not show up. Okay, so that's how, and it's not just door trim. There's lots of things in family creation that works like. Okay, now, depending upon what the scale of your drawing is, and the company you work at and how they want to do things, will determine what level of detail you're going to show on your printed sheets when you print them. A lot of times, the floor plan itself will be coarse level of detail unless there's a need for it to be fine. Okay, so you may or may not need to show, you know, the layers of drywall and stud layer and sheathing and things like that in your floor plan view. However, that does make dimensioning a little more difficult. So there's a trade-off in there, and whatever company you go to work for, they're going to have a standard way of doing things, and so that's what you're going to follow through with. Do we have? Yeah, let's look at a wall section here. Okay, so this wall section, that's a generic wall, so there's no layers in it. That's not a good example because we're just dealing with a generic wall there. Okay, but you've seen the wall sections in the projects that we've been working through, and you're going to see them going forward too, as to how fine, medium, and coarse are going to affect a wall section drawing. Now, when you create a new view, it automatically sets the level of detail based on the scale of the drawing. And so if we go to, let's go to Manage and Additional Settings and go to Detail Level. Now here are the defaults. So when you create a new view of some type and you set the scale as you're creating it, any of these scales here, it will default to coarse detail level. Okay. So 3/8 and up would go to a medium level, 1.5 and up would automatically go to fine level. Those are the default settings, and they can be changed around. I don't recommend you making any changes, but I just wanted to show you that's where the Revit comes up with what level of detail to set for what scale. Okay, that's that. Now, into this one, we'll move on to our next stuff. And I didn't say it earlier, but this week is just going to be watching some videos and learning and trying out a few things before we move on to actually doing some drawing stuff next week. So, get ready. Here we go.